Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you the guides, tips, and tricks video. This time we are talking about unit promotions. Just as a quick caveat, I'm going to do all of the unit promotion classes in the game except for air units. So air units will be another video that won't be included in this video, but the rest of them will. So let's jump right into it. Alright, first up, let's take a look at the Recon unit. I do want to explain some basic things about promotions. The first of these is the first level of promotion is very easy to get, both in terms of the amount of experience required and the way to do it. Barbarians will give you additional experience for the first promotion that your unit gets. So from going to no promotions to one promotion, you get increased experience when fighting barbarians. After that, you're going to get massively reduced experience when fighting barbarians, but normal experience when fighting other players in other civilizations. So just FYI on that. Additionally, the amount of experience in between each level gets progressively higher. So going from 0 to 1 is much easier than going from 1 to 2. Going from 1 to 2 is much easier than going from level 2 to level 3. So it's going to get harder to get these promotions as you go. Let's talk a little bit about the tree itself. These dotted lines just mean that once you have the one above the dotted line, you can then go basically follow the dotted line to another promotion. So if I pick Alpine as a promotion, I can get Sentry as my second promotion, or I can get Guerrilla as my second promotion because of this line. Same with Ranger. If I pick Ranger first, I can get Guerrilla or Sentry as my second promotion, just FYI. Additionally, you're not required to go down the tree. The promotions tend to get better as you get deeper into the tree, as you hit more prerequisites, but that's not always true. There's going to be a couple of scenarios we talk about where I think actually the first two picks are the best two picks even for the first two promotions, which is interesting. All right, let's talk about the Scout. This is a Recon class unit. There's two Recon class units that I know of, perhaps a little bit more, but I think it's just the two. I think it's a Scout and a Ranger are basically the only Recon units. The Ranger is a fighting unit that it comes much later in the game. The Scout is your early game basic scouting unit. I really recommend Alpine on your first promotion for Scouts, and why this is this gives you faster movement on hill terrain. There's a lot of hills, and any terrain that has hills and rainforest on it, or hills and woods on it, you still get the Alpine movement bonus through there, which is equal to the Ranger movement bonus through there. So the Ranger is only better when you're moving through flat rainforest or flat woods, whereas the rest of the time Alpine is better. So anytime there's any hills at all, I just prefer Alpine. I find it gives me more overall utility out of the Scouts. Second promotion, I tend to end up with Sentry because my goal is as scouting in the early game to see as many units, many tiles as possible. And my third promotion, if I get there on a Scout, which is pretty rare, I will pick up Spyglass for the extra sight range for exactly the same reason as before, which is Scouts are designed to go scout. In the later game, though, if you want to use Rangers as a fighting unit, and they're an interesting fighting unit, they're decently powerful, and they have some kind of unique bonuses. If you want to use them as a fighting bonuses, the fighting bonuses are basically Guerrilla and Ambush. Can move after attacking. Rangers have 3 movement and only 1 range, and they are a ranged unit, so shooting then moving away, or moving in, shooting then moving away again, are all possible things you can do with Rangers, and it allows you to cycle them in a way that you could do with horse units in Civ 5, but you can't really do with any unit in Civ 6 right now, where you can shoot, move away, move another one in, shoot, move away, move another one in, shoot, move away, which is pretty cool. So Guerrilla is a decent promotion for that. And then Ambush is amazing. So if you guys aren't clear on combat strengths, the way it works is it's a direct comparison between the two units. So if you have a unit with 50 combat strength fighting a unit with 45 combat strength, the difference is 5 combat strength. And that's what's going to determine the damage. If you have a unit with 110 combat strength fighting a unit with 100 combat strength, the difference is 10 combat strength. And that's going to be what determines that. It doesn't matter the actual values, it's just the difference between the values that's important. And it seems to be, although the code isn't released yet, so we don't have the exact formula for how this works, it seems to be around plus 30 combat strength is when you start one-shotting other units. So plus 20 combat strength is a hell of a lot of combat strength. We're seeing 5 being a kind of weak to medium bonus, 10 being a pretty standard bonus, 20 being an amazing bonus, and 30 being one-shot range. So plus 20 combat strength is a hell of a lot of combat strength. It makes it a very, very powerful promotion if you can pick it up on a Ranger-style unit. And then finally, Camouflage. Camouflage is pretty damn weak, mostly because it seems buggy. There's 2 modifiers in here, Adjacent and Enemy, and so far I have found that when I move it adjacent to a friendly player, a player who is not my enemy, it still gets revealed. It's supposed to be only revealed by adjacent enemy units, but if I move it next to a friendly unit, it still reveals the Scout when he's camouflage. And additionally, I've had a bug now where I promoted a Scout with camouflage, and one of my opponents had sight on that Scout the entire rest of the game, no matter where it moved, no matter how close it was or wasn't to his cities or units. I'm staying away from this promotion right now until I figure out the boundary conditions for the bugs, because at the moment it doesn't seem to be working as intended, and I don't want to waste my promotions for no reason. Okay, so that's the Recon class. Let's go move off the Recon class and take a look at the Melee class. The Melee class is the Warrior, Swordsman, Musketman, Infantry line of upgrades, and this unit already has one promotion. Don't let that confuse you. That's what the silver or the bronzy gold stuff here looks like. And what is this? So of these promotions, I prefer. I like both of these initial promotions quite a lot. And I'm not a big fan of the rest of the line for a couple reasons. So Battlecry, 7 combat strength versus melee and ranged units. Be careful with the wording on this. Melee is exactly what it sounds like. Melee, it's not, that's rather. Melee is not exactly what it sounds like. When you think melee, I think units that attack adjacent to each other. But this is actually the class of units, not the class of combat they do. So this does not refer to light cavalry or heavy cavalry. This is only responding to the melee class of units. I believe it also includes the anti-cavalry class of units. So I believe it responds to pikemen and spearmen, but I'm not 100% on that either. Those now get the card modifier for production off of melee, but I don't know if they are classed as melee in terms of this promotion. It'd be interesting to test. But as it is, this is going to be fighting other melee class units or ranged units. 7 combat strength isn't too bad. It's a decent sized combat strength bonus. If you look at Tortoise is quite nice. It is 10 combat strength when defending against ranged attacks. If you have both of these in promotions, like these are the first 2 promotions you pick up, you have 17 combat strength, which begins to be a very significant boost in combat strength when defending against ranged attacks. And considering melee units are so slow in this game, their primary purpose is blocking and exerting zone of control, although zone of control feels a little bit weak right now, but their primary purpose is blocking and absorbing fire. So getting these 2 promotions together can be very strong in terms of how tanky you make your melee units. Commando, I've never found this to be useful in any way whatsoever. I don't know why this is such a specialized promotion. It seems very strange to me that it is in here at all. Can scale cliff walls. You can see on the map over here, these are cliffs. I assume cliff wall means that if I try to disembark from a cliff, I wouldn't be able to unless I had that promotion. I've never ever had a reason to use that. That promotion seems so specialized and so bad to me. I don't understand why I'd ever want to take that. Amphibious is surprisingly decent. No combat strength and no movement penalty when attacking from sea or river. That allows me to attack across rivers, although it doesn't say that. It does actually allow you to attack across rivers for just the cost of the tile you're moving into, as opposed to the +3 that you'd normally have to pay when moving across a river. So this is actually decent, but again, I'm probably partial to taking these 2. Melee units don't seem to have a very long lifespan. They're in the front of the fight. They tend to get killed because they're slow. They can't move away very easily. Their whole job is to absorb fire, so they tend to do that a lot. I don't find that I get my melee units promoted very deeply versus human players in particular, so I tend to like to get the early bonus from these. Amphibious, it's decent, but a lot of times I'd rather just take both of these. 7 combat strength versus anti-cav units. This seems like a very unnecessary role for this unit. Anti-cav being spearmen and pikemen, and later some other units too, but those are the ones you're mostly going to be seeing this versus. I don't feel that those are so strong that I need my melee units specialized to deal with them. 10 combat strength when fighting in a district. Again, mostly when I'm in districts, I want my ranged units in districts. This is going to be a unit in a encampment or a unit in a city center. I suppose this could be useful for defense if I'm fortifying on like my campus district or something. But again, I just tend not to get this deep in the melee line. Of those 2, I would definitely take urban warfare over this one. Elite Guard, +1 additional attack per turn if movement allows, can move after attacking. This seems like a fairly weak promotion. Can move after attacking is fairly nice, but melee units don't have enough movement already. They only have 2 movement. So most of the time, if you're attacking any tile that is not a flatland tile adjacent to you, so if you're attacking a hill next to you, or you have to attack a flatland tile 2 tiles away from you, you're not going to have any extra movement. You're certainly going to not have enough movement for additional attack. And additionally, melee units are blocker units. You don't tend to slam them into units very often, because mostly what you're trying to do is hold that tile. And the best way to hold a tile is to leave that unit fortified so it heals every turn and gets the double fortification bonus. Fortification bonus is +3 combat strength per turn of fortification for up to 2 turns worth of fortification. So most of the time, you just want your units to stay fortified and not actually doing any attacking with it as melee. So again, I expect this promotion to be fairly weak, because you're most of the time just not going to be in a position where it's going to be helpful. All right, let's move on to the range class. Let's go take a look at their promotions. All right. This one I'm a little bit more split on. I tend to use my archers situationally. When I'm fighting barbs or just other players and they're just kind of it's not near a city. I'm not pushing a city. I'm like, especially on defense, I tend to like Garrison and Volley both. Garrison is amazing for ranged units sitting in encampments or ranged units sitting in city centers. It's 10 combat strength. We've talked about how the combat strength works. 10 is quite a decent number. You can stack that with Volley if you wish to, so that can give you 15 combat strength very quickly when defending inside city districts, which is quite nice. However, if you're not dealing with city districts whatsoever and you're just out in the middle of somewhere fighting, certainly Volley into Aerostorm can be nice. That's 12 combat strength, not quite as good as 15, but still pretty good, and doesn't have that restriction of being in a city center. Incendiaries is decent when you are pushing, when you're attacking enemy cities or enemy city states in the early game. It's a lot of times if they have walls up, your units don't do very good damage when this enemy city has walls up, and it is nice to get a ranged unit that gets a little bit of a boost to fighting city district defenses. And I tend to promote this way often with my archers, because you tend to have a couple archers in the early game to fight off barbs, and then if you turn that into a very early push versus a player, it can be nice to have something that actually does some damage to the cities before you build siege units. However, these bonuses aren't all that strong. I have found suppression to be absolutely useless. All horse units currently ignore zone of control already, which means that I don't need a unit that exerts zone of, I don't need my archers exerting zone of control, because when is that going to help me versus? It's not really going to help me versus melee. My archers don't tend to be next to melee, and it doesn't help me at all versus any of the horse units. So this feels like shit to me. Suppression, I almost never get it. And placement, 10 combat strength when defending versus city attacks. This is, again, combos very nicely with incendiaries. If you are pushing into an enemy city, it helps to have these combined bonuses. It makes it harder for the city to kill your unit, and it makes you more efficient at killing the city. And then expert marksmanship is quite good. The tooltip on this is a little bit weird. It says +1 additional attack per turn if the unit has not moved. That doesn't actually seem to be how it works. It seems to actually give you an additional attack per turn if your unit has movement remaining, which is different than the tooltip. But I have had definitely had scenarios where I've moved an archer or a ranged unit one tile and then shot twice because it had a great general near it, which gave it 3 movement. And the way this is worded, it acts like you should never be able to move at all, but it actually is dependent on how many movement points you have remaining. So if you have 2 movement points remaining, you can shoot twice, or if you have, yeah. So this has been pretty decent, honestly. So I do tend to promote towards the later promotions in these units if I think the unit's going to survive for a long period of time. Although I might be tempted to take Volley plus Garrison if I'm defending, just for the immediate bonuses of having that extra combat strength if I'm defending a city. All right, let's move on and take a look at the. So we've done Recon, we've done Melee, we've done Ranged. Let's take a look at the anti-cav unit. So that would be the Spearman and this line of promotions. These are some weird ones. So let's talk through them. +5 combat strength versus cavalry units is a quite good one. This feels to be something that I actually use anti-cav for. I don't build them too often, but when I do build them, I'm building them specifically because I'm being swarmed with horsemen and I want some counterplay to that. So this bonus is quite satisfying for that. Thrust, again, doesn't seem very useful to me because I don't really care about melee units. I'm not being pushed. Maybe if I'm fighting Rome or something, then I may want some benefit versus melee units, but in general, the units doing the damage to me are horse units and ranged units, and this does not help me versus either of them. Square, you read this and you go, that's amazing! Double the combat strength when occupying the same hex as a support unit. That doesn't actually do anything like it says it does, and I have no idea why the tooltips do this. So what this actually does is it gives you, once you have reached a certain tech, and I believe it is military tradition, you gain flanking and support combat bonuses, which basically are +2 combat strength for adjacent units on defense, and +2 for adjacent friendly units on defense, and +2 combat strength attacking for adjacent melee, adjacent friendly units again. So it's just +2 combat strength for adjacent units, basically, is the support bonus. This actually, what happens is it doubles the support bonus. So instead of getting +2 per adjacent unit, you get +4 per adjacent unit. And it has nothing to do with occupying the same hex as a support unit. It doesn't matter if you have a battering ram on the square of this unit or not. It doesn't give any increased offense or defense. So I don't understand why this wording is like this if they were originally intending it to do something different than it does, but it makes no fucking sense compared to what the actual bonuses you get compared to what the description is. The bonus is actually decent. Getting double support bonus is really, really nice, but I don't understand why it is worded that way. So especially since you can't cross over here, and getting these combined don't seem very useful. They're opposite opposite purposes. Going down this line might be quite nice. Redeploy, +1 movement is okay for a melee unit. That is one of my biggest complaints with melee units, is how slow they are, so certainly getting +1 movement is nice. But however, choke points is really, really nice, which is +7 combat strength when defending in woods, jungles, hills, or marsh. A lot of times, those are the type of tiles you actually want to defend, especially hill tiles, because you can be if you have a hill unit, if you have a hill here and a hill behind it and your opponents are coming in from there, you can shoot over your hill. If you have a unit fortified on your hill, they have to come through your hill, your unit on that hill, before they can get to your ranged units, which means choke points is a really, really nice promotion for something like that. So both of these are quite solid. Hold the line, adjacent units of different class get a +10 combat strength versus cavalry. Okay, I'm not against that. That's an all right promotion. As I said, you tend to fight a lot of cavalry style units right now because they're very, very strong. So getting additional bonuses for non-anti-cav units by having an anti-cav unit around seems useful. But to be honest, I've never received this promotion in combat. My spearmen have either died or the fight has ended long before this one has ever become relevant to the fight. So my recommendations are these 4, with maybe a little bit of this one if you can get it. These ones do not seem very good to me, either of them. So I guess this is kind of interesting though, because I haven't realized there's 2 of these. So 10 combat strength twice starts to be a lot, and this is just versus melee strength in general. This is defending versus melee strength. So maybe one of the ways to deal with Rome is to get pikemen and try to double promote them versus melee and deal with Rome's legions. So it's an interesting idea. I'll have to check it out, but it feels very specific. Very, very situational, whereas this one feels much more equal to the situation that you're likely to build anti-cav units in, which is when you're being pushed by cav. All right, so moving on, let's take a look. Light cavalry, so horsemen. This line of promotion, horsemen, cavalry, etc. 2 lines again, of course. +5 combat strength versus anti-cav, or +5 combat strength when attacking ranged or siege units. Of course, you'd love to use coursers over here, because what you'd love to have happening is your horsemen flanking around and killing ranged units. In reality, the way that the tiles work, the way that you're attacking into cities, especially versus players, most of the time you're not getting to do that. Most of the time you have to attack their front line, which in case this one is probably going to be better, the combat strength versus anti-cav, just so their pikemen and spearmen are less effective at killing your horsemen. Moving on, 2 times flanking bonus. We've already talked about flanking bonus. That is the +2 combat strength for adjacent units, adjacent friendly units. 2 times that would be nice. That's similar to the actual spearman bonus, although the wording is a lot more sane. So that one's not a bad bonus. Probably better than pillaging, costs only 1 movement point. I don't actually like pillaging in this game, mostly because pillaging does not always heal. It's based on the tile you pillage. There's a list. You can use the Civilpedia and look up pillaging to find that list, and that will tell you the yields of all of the things that you pillage, what you get. And you can see that pillaging a farm gives healing, but mine quarries, fishing boats, pastures, plantations, camps, lumber mills, spaceports, aqueducts, aerodomes, industrial zones, harbors, theaters, commerce hubs, holy sites, and campuses do not give you a heal promotion or any healing when you do that. Which means that a lot of times you can't use all of your movement and put your unit at harm's way just to get a little bit of extra science or a little bit of extra gold. And pillaging districts in particular is a pain in the ass, because if you do succeed in taking the city, which is your goal of doing that, you have to rebuild all the buildings in the districts that you pillaged, which means that most of the time I'd rather not pillage a district when I'm attacking a city, because I want to keep the city and make the city useful, and that means I want those districts. So I don't actually find pillaging costs being put down to 1 all that useful as a promotion as a whole. Moving on, pursuit on a horseman is always useful. They're already very fast with 4 movement. Moving them up to 5 is a really good thing. The movement bonus is quite strong. And 7 combat strength versus siege units is a particularly poor promotion. There aren't all that many siege units. The siege units are not particularly scary versus horsemen. If the siege units are going to be generally scary versus cities, not scary versus horses, and they're going to be protected by other units, this bonus seems very poor to me. So definitely pursuit if I had to choose between the 2 of those. Escort, mobility, formation units all inherit the escort's movement speed. This means that I can move if I attach a unit to the horseman, the attached unit gains the horseman's movement. This is fairly decent. I'm not entirely sure. I was getting some comments on YouTube recently telling me that things like battering rams and siege towers do not affect horse units. Like, you don't actually get the bonus on horse units. I was under the impression you did get the bonus on horse units. I thought I had tested that, and I thought it was, but I'm not 100% on that right now. This is useful sometimes if you could actually it's a decent promotion. If those units actually help your unit, help your horse units, then it's a decent promotion. And it's certainly a nice promotion for moving workers or builders around or moving settlers around. But honestly, a lot of times it's just not that impactful. Same with the +1 movement bonus. Really, it's these early promotion combat strength promotions that I care most about on the light cavalry units. All right, let's move on to heavy cavalry. I think this set of units has some of the best long-term sustainability in the game entirely. Not because they go from heavy chariots, which are a decent unit, decent combat strength, decent speed. In their early game, they only have 1 maintenance since they're in the classical era, or ancient era, excuse me, which means that when you get the card that reduces maintenance cost by 1, you can keep them around at no cost to your empire for the rest of the game, and they upgrade nicely into knights, and then knights upgrade into tanks, and knights are very early in the medieval era, whereas light cav, they don't upgrade until cavalry, which are much later in the tree. So whereas knights are right here, first part of medieval, the upgrade for light cavalry isn't over here until cavalry, which is in the industrial era, which means that I get a lot more value out of my my promoted heavy chariots than I do out of my promoted horsemen, because they're going to help me for multiple eras while I'm going to have a big gap in defense with horsemen. So I've really come around to heavy chariots. I like them quite a lot, and their bonuses are awesome. So charged, +10 combat strength versus a fortified defender. This is a decent bonus. I mean, blocker units are going to... It's hard to remove dug-in blocker units, and this is one of the ways to do that. That's decent. However, I love barding. +7 combat strength when defending versus ranged attacks. It means these knights or knights and heavy chariots are very difficult to remove just because the archer shots and the city shots don't do a lot to them. So that's interesting to me. And I like rout. 5 combat strength against damaged units. This is reminiscent of charge in Civ 5. It's just a nice bonus to have. Most of the times you're attacking wounded units, because you'll put 1 shot into them with an archer, and then you attack them with the heavy cav, and you're very capable of forcing a unit to be damaged or not damaged. So this bonus tends to apply a lot. +7 combat strength versus units in districts. Again, you don't tend to slam... Well, maybe in this game you do a little bit more, because the defenses of a city don't tend to be all that strong, so you can actually do things like slam horse units into cities and actually get good damage. But this is probably really only... Reading this bonus, it's probably only going to be A, on defense, and B, on... if a unit happens to be standing kind of randomly in a district that is not an encampment or a city district that has walls. Because I believe if a unit is standing in an encampment or city district, the unit takes no damage at all, because you're not fighting the unit, you're actually fighting the city district or encampment's walls and hit points, which means this bonus probably isn't going to apply the vast majority of times that you're using your heavy chariot. Again, rout just feels a little bit better to me. Armor piercing, 7 combat strength against other heavy cav. This is a nice promotion, but you can go down barding route and then pick up armor piercing if you want, because of the way the lines work here. So you can move those across those dotted lines down here to do that, and that's quite useful. And I think it's probably a little bit better than reactive armor, although there's situational times for either of them. This is a bonus that applies every single time you're fighting other heavy cav. This bonus here is only on defense, but it's against heavy cav and anti-cav against spearmen and pikemen. So definitely situationally, they're both good. It's just which of those you're going to be doing more. You're going to be attacking more, or you're going to be defending more, or is there going to be a bit of a mix? Either way is good. And then finally, breakthrough is actually really good on a horse unit, because a horse unit actually has enough movement to take advantage of the +1 additional attack per turn if the movement allows. It's still a little bit detrimental in the sense that slamming melee units repeatedly damages them very quickly, but it is both a way to get a lot of experience quickly as well as to do a lot of damage. This gets around the 1 tile per unit, or 1 unit per tile restriction of Civ 5 and Civ 6. So if you think about it, one of the biggest factors that restricts your ability to attack a unit or attack a city is how many units can attack it at once. And that's what the tile restriction does, the 1 unit per tile restriction does. And that promotion is one of the ways to get around that 1 unit per tile restriction, because it's essentially 2 units that get to do the attacking, which means this promotion is quite nice. I really do like the barding route either of these into breakthrough promotions. I think these are all synergized very well, and they really bring out the power of heavy cav. So I love that promotion line. I think this is one of my favorite all-around units in terms of their long-term sustainability throughout the game. All right, moving on, let's take a look at siege. The siege promotions are kind of boring, but they're decent. Honestly, anytime you build siege don't have any production modifiers right now, so you always pay full price when building siege units. Unlike anything else, like heavy cav and light cav, you can get 100% modifier towards. Ranged units and melee units, you can get a 50% modifier towards. So it's very expensive to build catapults and build siege units in general, because there's no modifiers to that. And when I build siege units, I want my siege units to kill cities. That's why I built siege units. Otherwise, I'd build ranged units because ranged units are better in every other way, between cost and damage and movement, etc. So I really don't see much point in things like grape shot and shrapnel. I would just much rather go combat strength when defending is good because they're going to focus fire your siege engines with their city as well as their units if they can, and then plus 10 combat strength versus district defenses is really what you want them to do, which is break down walls and soften up cities so you can take them. Expert crew can attack after moving. We've already talked about this a little bit. This is okay. Yeah, okay, you can now move in and shoot. That's not bad. And it's probably better than quite often than the option over here, which is plus 10 combat strength versus naval units. This feels extremely situational. This one feels like it will be useful most of the time. And then plus 1 range is awesome for a unit trying to break down walls and hit cities. So to me, it's a pretty clear, except in some very, very situational areas where like I have a catapult and I'm desperately trying to defend or something. 98% of the time, I'm going to pick this right-hand side of the promotion tree. All right, moving on. Let's take a look at, we've done all of our land units, I believe. Yeah, so let's go to our 2 naval units. There's 2 classes of naval unit. We have, this is naval ranged, I believe. Yeah, right. One's galley and one's, yes. So this is naval ranged here. We'll do them first. 7 combat strength versus naval units, or 7 combat strength versus city districts. It seems very clear why you're choosing one of these. One of these is for just killing other ships, and one of them is for killing cities on the coast. 7 combat strength versus land units. Okay, 10 combat strength versus district defenses. These have good synergy, clearly, because it's the same friggin' bonus twice. Supply fleet can heal outside of friendly territory versus proximity fuses, plus 7 combat strength when defending versus air attacks. This is going to be a much later situational gameplay thing. So this is interesting because this line all the way up, including this one, basically is for beating down cities in all the different eras, while these ones here are much more diverse. This is for killing some support units, this is for killing other naval units, this is for being able to fight, then run away, and then heal without having to go back to your own territory and then come back and fight again. And plus 1 range, of course, is very good. So this just feels like a situational. It depends on the situation you're engaging in, which of these you're going to promote versus which is better just straight up. That's good. That means there's some options for that. Let's take a look at land melee. We have plus 7 combat strength from naval versus naval units. Okay, the same thing versus 1 movement. 1 movement's very nice though. Making your melee units faster is always a good thing. Fighting on the sea is a little bit different than fighting on land because the tile cost of every single tile is always 1. Which means that it's basically like fighting on land, but in like a flat plains. Like a flat plains with no river is the equivalent of fighting on the sea. So plus 1 movement is not quite as good as it would be otherwise because you're not worried about having like 3 movement costs for attacking into a wooded hill or something. So not quite as good as it would be on a land unit, but still decent. Combat strength versus naval units, of course. Plus 1 sight range. I guess this is just for like massive scouting. This is probably very good on Norway's unit, so they can move faster and see further to get more goodie huts. And scouting in the early game, okay. But these are not combat bonuses whatsoever. Plus 10 combat strength when defending versus ranged attacks. That's a really good one if you're doing any sort of naval brawling. Heals outside of friendly territories. We talked about that. That's good for being able to keep your units alive and still active in an area that's far from home. Plus 10 combat strength when in a formation. Don't know what a formation is. That's fairly interesting. I have no idea what a formation is. So you do get something called corps and armies, where you can combine multiple units into one unit that gets higher combat strength. And you get the naval equivalent, which are fleets and armadas. And those are quite good because, it's one of the ways to get around the 1 unit per tile restriction. But I have no idea what a formation is. So I don't know if this is 10 combat strength when it's adjacent to another unit, or if it's 10 combat strength when it's in a fleet or an armada. I don't know what that bonus really does, quite honestly. Plus 14 combat strength versus naval raider units. The hell is a naval raider unit? Yeah, this just goes to show how little sea combat I've done. I have no idea what a naval raider unit is, and I have no idea what a formation is. So these bonuses don't mean anything to me right now. I'm sure you guys will tell me in the comments section, and probably that's not really what you want to hear from a guide video, but I am trying to give you guys both the knowledge I have and the limitations of the knowledge I have, so you guys can make your own decisions and make better decisions about what you're doing in your gameplay. So again, talk through these, I think, pretty clearly, and that's about it, I think. All right, So let me just double check that we've done all the units I wanted to get through. We did see, yeah, I think we did. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Talked a little bit about the promotions in the game as they stand right now. Hopefully you guys have got some sense of when I find them useful and when I don't. And if you've enjoyed the content, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button here on YouTube or go follow me on Twitch. And I make lots of Civ6 content, guide videos, and gameplay footage, so go check it out if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys soon.